Text number 25. Avyaktoyam achintyoyam avikaryoyam uchyate tasmadevam viditvainam nanushocitum arhasi. Avyaktam, invisible. I am this soul. Achintya, inconceivable. I am this soul. Avikaryaha, unchangeable. I am this soul. Uchyate, it is said. Tasma, therefore, evam, like this. Viditva, knowing it well. Enam, this soul. Do not. Anushochitum, to lament. Arhasi, you deserve. It is said that the soul is invisible, inconceivable, and immutable. Knowing this, you should not grieve for the body. Purport. As described previously, the magnitude of the soul is so small for our material calculation that it cannot be seen even by the most powerful microscope. Therefore, he is invisible. As far as the soul's existence is concerned, no one can establish his existence experimentally beyond the proof of Shruti or Vedic wisdom. We have to accept this truth because there is no other source of understanding the existence of the soul, although it is a fact by perception. There are many things we have to accept solely on the grounds of superior authority. No one can deny the existence of his father based upon the authority of his mother. There is no source of understanding the identity of father except by the authority of the mother. Similarly, there is no source of understanding the soul except by studying the Vedas. In other words, the soul is inconceivable by human experimental knowledge. The soul is consciousness and conscious. That also is a statement of Vedas, and we have to accept that. Unlike the bodily changes, there is no change in the soul. As eternally unchangeable, the soul remains atomic in comparison to the infinite supreme soul. The supreme soul is infinite and the atomic soul is infinitesimal. Therefore, the infinitesimal soul, being unchangeable, can never become equal to the infinite soul or the supreme personality of Godhead. This concept is repeated in the Vedas in different ways just to confirm the stability of the conception of the soul. Repetition of something is necessary in order that we understand the matter thoroughly without error. Text 26. Atachainam nityajatam nityam va manyase mritam tatapi tvam mahabaho nainam shochitum arhasi. Ata, if, however, cha also, enam, this soul, nityajatam, always born, nityam, forever, va, either, manyase, you so think, mritam, dead, tata, api, still, tvam, you, mahabaho, O mighty armed one, na, never, enam, about the soul, shochitum, to lament, arhasi, deserve. Translation. If, however, you think that the soul or the symptoms of life will always be born and die forever, you still have no reason to lament, O mighty armed. Purport. There is always a class of philosophers almost akin to the Buddhists who do not believe in the separate existence of the soul beyond the body. When Lord Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita, it appears that such philosophers existed, and they are known as the Lokayatikas and Vaibhashikas. Such philosophers maintain that life symptoms can take place at a certain mature condition of material combination. The modern material scientists and materialist philosophers also think similarly. According to them, the body is a combination of physical elements, and at certain stage, the life symptoms develop by interaction of the physical and chemical elements. The science of anthropology is based on this philosophy. Currently, many pseudo-religions now becoming fashionable in America are also adhering to this philosophy, as are the nihilistic, non-devotional Buddhist sects. Even if Arjuna did not believe in the existence of the soul, as in the Vaibhashika philosophy, there would still have been no cause for lamentation. No one laments the loss of a certain bulk of chemicals and stops discharging his prescribed duties. On the other hand, in modern science and scientific warfare, so many tons of chemicals are wasted for achieving victory over the enemy. According to the Vaibhashika philosophy, the so-called soul or Atma vanquishes along with the deterioration of the body. So in any case, whether Arjuna accepted the Vedic conclusion that there is an atomic soul or he did not believe in the existence of the soul, he had no reason to lament. According to this theory, since there are so many living entities generating out of matter every moment and so many of them are being vanquished every moment, there is no need to grieve for such incidents. If there were no rebirth for the soul, Arjuna had no reason to be afraid of being affected by sinful reactions due to his killing his grandfather and teacher. But at the same time, Krishna sarcastically addressed Arjuna as Mahabahu, mighty arm, because he at least did not accept the theory of Vaibhashikas, which leaves aside the Vedic wisdom. As a Kshatriya, Arjuna belonged to the Vedic culture and it behooved him to continue to follow its principles. 27. Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityur dhruvam janma mritasya cha tasmad aparyar arte natvam shochitum arasi. Jatasya, one who has taken his birth, he is certainly dhruva, a fact. Mrityu, death, dhruvan, it is also fact. Janma, birth, mritasya, of the dead, cha, also. Tasma, therefore, aparihare, of that which is unavoidable. Arte, in the matter. Na, do not. Tvam, you. Shochitum, to lament. Arasi, deserve. Translation. One who has taken his birth is sure to die, and after death, one is sure to take birth again. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament. Purport. One has to take birth according to one's activities of life, and after finishing one term of activities, one has to die to take birth for the next. In this way, one is going through one cycle of birth and death after another, without liberation. This cycle of birth and death does not, however, support unnecessary murder, slaughter, and war. At the same time, violence and war are inevitable factors in human society for keeping law and order. Battle of Kurukshetra, being the will of the Supreme, was an inevitable event, and to fight for the right cause is the duty of a Kshatriya. Why should he be afraid or aggrieved at the death of his relative, since he was discharging his proper duty? He did not deserve to break the law, thereby becoming subjected to the reactions of sinful acts, of which he was so afraid. By avoiding the discharge of his proper duty, he would not be able to stop the death of his relatives, and he would be degraded due to his selection of the wrong path of action. Text 28. Avyaktadini bhutani vyaktamadhyani bharata avyaktaridraneva tatra ka paridevana. Avyaktadini, in the beginning unmanifested, bhutani, all that are created, vyakta, manifested, madhyani, in the middle, bharata, descendant of Bharata, avyakta, non-manifested, nidhanani, when vanquished, eva, it is all like that, tatra, therefore, ka, what, paridevana, lamentation. Purport. Accepting that there are two classes of philosophers, one believing in the existence of the soul and another not believing in the existence of the soul, there is no cause for lamentation in either case. Non-believers in the existence of the soul are called atheists by followers of the Vedic wisdom. Yet even if, for argument's sake, we accept the atheistic theory, there is still no cause for lamentation. Apart from the separate existence of the soul, the material elements remain unmanifested before the creation. From this subtle state of non-manifestation comes manifestation, just as from ether, air is generated, from air, fire is generated, from fire, water is generated, and from water, earth becomes manifested. From earth, many varieties of manifestations takes place. Take, for example, a big skyscraper manifested from the earth. When it is dismantled, the manifestation becomes again unmanifested and remains as atoms in the ultimate stage. The law of conservation of energy remains, but in course of time, things are manifested and unmanifested, that is the difference. Then what cause is there for lamentation, either in the stage of manifestation or in unmanifestation? Somehow or other, even in the unmanifested stage, things are not lost. Both at the beginning and at the end, all elements remain unmanifested, and only in the middle are they manifested, and this does not make any real material difference. And if we accept the Vedic conclusion as stated in the Bhagavad Gita that these material bodies are perishable in due course of time, antavanta ime deha, but that the soul is eternal, nitya sukta sharirina, then we must remember always that the body is like a dress. Therefore, why lament the change of a dress? The material body has no factual existence in relation to the eternal soul. It is something like a dream. In a dream, we may think of flying in the sky or sitting on a chariot as a king, but when we wake up, we can see that we are neither in the sky nor seated on the chariot. The Vedic wisdom encourages self-realization on the basis of the non-existence of the material body. Therefore, in either case, whether one believes in the existence of the soul or one does not believe in the existence of the soul, there is no cause for lamentation or loss of the body. Text 29. Ascharyavat paschati kaschidenam ascharyavat vadati chataiva chanya ascharyavat chainamanya shrunoti sutvapi enam vedana chaiva kaschit. Ascharyavat, as amazing. Paschati, sees, kaschit, someone, enam, this soul, Ascharyavat, as amazing. Vadati speaks of tata, there, thus, eva, certainly, cha, also, anya, another, Ascharyavat, similarly amazing. Cha, also, enam, this soul, anya, another, shnoti, hears of, shrutva, be, having heard. Api, even, enam, this soul, veda, knows, none, ever, cha, and, eva, certainly, kaschit, someone. Translation. Some look on the soul as amazing, some describe him as amazing, and some hear of him as amazing, while others, even after hearing about him, cannot understand him at all. Since Gita Upanishad is largely based on the principles of the Upanishads, it is not surprising to also find this passage in the Katha Upanishad. Shravan Shravanyapi bahubiryo na labhya shrinvanto vibhavo yam na vidyu आश्चर्यो भक्त कुशलो वस्य लब्धा आश्चर्योस्य ज्ञाता कुशलानु शिष्टा. The fact that the atomic soul is within the body of a gigantic animal, in the body of a gigantic banyan tree, and also in the microbic germs, millions and billions of which occupy only an inch of space, is certainly very amazing. Men with a poor fund of knowledge and men who are not austere cannot understand the wonders of the individual atomic spark of spirit, even though it is explained by the greatest authority of knowledge, who imparted lessons even to Brahma, the first living being in the universe. Owing to a gross material conception of things, most men in this age cannot imagine how such a small particle can become both so great and so small. So men look at the soul proper as wonderful either by constitution or by description. Illusioned by the material energy, people are so engrossed in subject matters for sense gratification that they have very little time to understand the question of self-understanding, even though it is a fact that without this self-understanding, all activities result in ultimate defeat in the struggle for existence. Perhaps they have no idea that one must think of the soul and thus make a solution to the material miseries. Some people who are inclined to hear about the soul may be attending lectures in good association, but sometimes owing to ignorance they are misguided by acceptance of super soul and atomic soul as one without distinction of magnitude. It is very difficult to find a man who perfectly understands the position of the super soul, the atomic soul, and their respective functions and relationships, and all other major and minor details. And it is still more difficult to find a man who has actually derived full benefit from knowledge of the soul, and who is able to describe the position of the soul in different aspects. But if somehow or other one is able to understand the subject matter of the soul, then one's life is successful. The easiest process for understanding the subject matter of self, however, is to accept the statements of the Bhagavad Gita spoken by the greatest authority, Lord Krishna, without being deviated by other theories, but it also requires a great deal of penance and sacrifice, either in this life or in the previous ones. Before one is able to accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna can, however, be known as such by the causeless mercy of the pure devotee and by no other way. Text 30. Dehi nityam vadyoyam dehe sarvasya bharata tasma sarvani bhutani natvam shochitum arhasi. Dehi, the owner of material body, nityam, eternally, avadya, cannot be killed. I am the soul, dehe, in the body, sarvasya, of everyone, bharata, or descendant of Bharata, tasma, therefore, sarvani, all, bhutani, living entities that are born, none ever, tvam, you, shochitum, to lament, arhasi, deserve. O descendant of Bharata, he who dwells in the body can never be slain. Therefore, you need not grieve for any living being. Purport. The Lord now concludes the chapter of instruction on the immutable spirit soul. In describing the immortal soul in various ways, Lord Krishna establishes that the soul is immortal and the body is temporary. Therefore, Arjuna as a Kshatriya should not abandon his duty out of fear that his grandfather and teacher Bhishma and Drona will die in the battle. On the authority of Sri Krishna, one has to believe that there is a soul different from the material body, not that there is no such thing as soul, or that the living symptoms develop at a certain stage of material maturity, resulting from the interaction of chemicals. Though the soul is immortal, violence is not encouraged, but at the time of war, it is not discouraged when there is actual need for it. That need must be justified in terms of the sanction of the Lord and not capriciously. Text 31. Swadharmapi chaveksha navikambittum arhasi dharmadhyuddashrinyat kshatriyasya navidyate. Swadharma, one's own religious principles, api also, indeed, avekshasya, considering, never, vikampitum, to hesitate. Arhasi, you deserve, dharmyat, for religious principles, he indeed, yuddhat, then fighting, shreya, better engagement, anyat, any other, kshatriyasya, of the kshatriya, does not, vidyate, exist. Translation. Considering your specific duty as a kshatriya, you should know that there is no better engagement for you than fighting on religious principles, and so there is no need for hesitation. Purport. Out of the 4 orders of social administration, the second order for the matter of good administration is called Kshatriya. Kshat means hurt, one who gives freedom from harm is called Kshatriya. Trayate, to give protection. The Kshatriyas are trained for killing in the forest. A Kshatriya would go into the forest and challenge a tiger face to face, fight with the tiger with his sword. When the tiger was killed, it would be offered the royal order of cremation. This system has been followed even up to the present day by the Kshatriya kings of Jaipur state. Kshatriyas are specially trained for challenging and killing because religious violence is sometimes a necessary factor. Therefore, Kshatriyas are never meant for accepting directly the order of sannyas or renunciation. Non-violence in politics may be a diplomacy, but it is never a factor or principle. In the religious law books, it is stated, Ahaveshu mito anyunyam jivam shanto mahikshita yuddhamana param shaktya swargam yanti aparanmuka yajngeshu pashavo brahman hanyante satatam dvijay Sanskrita kila mantraischa cha tepi swargam avapnuvan. In the battlefield, a king or kshatriya while fighting another king envious of him is eligible for achieving the heavenly planets after death, as the brahmanas also attain the heavenly planets by sacrificing animals in the sacrificial fire. Therefore, killing on the battlefield on religious principles and killing animals in the sacrificial fire are not at all considered to be acts of violence, because everyone is benefited by the religious principles involved. The animal sacrifice gets a human life immediately without undergoing the gradual evolutionary process from one form to another. The Kshatriyas killed on the battlefield also attain the heavenly planets, such as do the Brahmanas who attain them by offering sacrifice. There are two kinds of sadharmas: specific duties. As long as one is not liberated, one has to perform the duties of his particular body in accordance with religious principles in order to achieve liberation. When one is liberated, one's swadharma, specific duty, becomes spiritual and is not in the material bodily concept. In the bodily conception of life, there are specific duties of the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas respectively, and such duties are unavoidable. Swadharma is ordained by the Lord, and this will be clarified in the 4th chapter. On the bodily plane, Swadharma is called Varnashrama Dharma, or man's stepping stone for spiritual understanding. Human civilization begins from the stage of Varnashrama Dharma, or specific duties in terms of the specific modes of nature of the body attained. Discharging one's specific duty in any field of action in accordance with the orders of higher authorities serves to elevate one to a higher status of life. Text 32. Yadrichaya chopapannam swargadharam apavritam sukina kshatriya partha labante yuddhamidrisha. Yadrichaya by its own accord, cha also upapannam arrived at Swarga of the heavenly planets, Dwaram, door, Apavritam, wide open, Sukina, very happy, Kshatriya, the members of the royal order, Partha, O son of Pratha, Lavante, do achieve, Yuddham, war, Idrisham like this. O Partha, happy are such Kshatriyas to whom such fighting opportunities come unsought, opening for them the doors of the heavenly planets. Purport: as the supreme teacher of the world, Lord Krishna condemns the attitude of Arjuna, who said, I do not find any good in this fighting, it will cause perpetual habitation in hell. Such statements by Arjuna were due to ignorance only. He wanted to become non-violent in the discharge of his specific duty. For a Kshatriya to be on the battlefield and to become non-violent is the philosophy of fools. In the Parashara Smriti, or religious quotes made by Parashara, the great sage and father of Vyasdev, it is stated, Kshatriyo hi praja rakshan shastra pani pradandayan nirjitya parasainyadi kshitim dharmena palayet. So Kshatriya's duty is to protect the citizens from all kinds of difficulties, and for that reason he has to apply violence in suitable cases for law and order. Therefore, he has to conquer the soldiers of numerical kings, and thus with religious principles he should rule over the world. Considering all aspects, Arjuna had no reason to refrain from fighting. If he should conquer his enemies, he would enjoy the kingdom, and if he should die in the battle, he would be elevated to the heavenly planets, whose doors were wide open to him. Fighting would be for his benefit in either case. Text 33. Atachetvam imam dharmam sangramam na karishyasi tata swadharmam kirtim cha hitva papam avapsasi. Therefore, chet, if you imam this dharmam as a religious duty, sangramam fighting, now do not, karishyasi perform, tata then, swadharmam your religious duty, kirtim reputation, cha also, hitva losing, papam sinful reaction, avapsasi will gain. Translation: if however you do not perform your religious duty of fighting, then you will certainly incur sins for neglecting your duties, and thus lose your reputation as a fighter. Purport: Arjuna was a famous fighter, and he attained fame by fighting many great demigods, including even Lord Shiva. After fighting and defeating Lord Shiva in the dress of a hunter, Arjuna pleased the Lord and received as a reward a weapon called Pashupatastra. Everyone knew that he was a great warrior. Even Dronacharya gave him benedictions and awarded him the special weapon by which he could kill even his teacher. So he was credited with so many military certificates from many authorities, including his adoptive father Indra, the heavenly king. But if he abandoned the battle Not only would he neglect his specific duty as Kshatriya, but he would lose all his fame and good name and thus prepare his royal road to hell. In other words, he would go to hell not by fighting but by withdrawing from battle. Text 34. Akirtim japi bhutani kateshyanti te vyayam sambhavitasya chakirtir varanadirichyate. Akirtim infamy cha also api over and above. Bhutani all people kateshyanti will speak te of you avyayam forever sambhavitasya for a respectable man cha also akirti ill fame. Varanad then death atirichyate becomes more. Translation. People will always speak of your infamy and for a respectable person dishonor is worse than death. Purport. Both as a friend and philosopher to Arjuna, Lord Krishna now gives his final judgment regarding Arjuna's refusal to fight. The Lord says, Arjuna, if you leave the battlefield before the battle even begins, people will call you a coward. And if you think that people may call you bad names, but that you will save your life by fleeing the battlefield, then my advice is that you are better to die than in the battle. For a respectable man like you, ill fame is worse than death. So you should not flee for fear of your life, better to die in the battle. That will save you from the ill fame of you misusing my friendship and from losing your prestige in society. So the final judgment of the Lord was for Arjuna to die in the battle and not withdraw. Text 38. Bhayadharanatam ranaduparatam mansyante tvam maharata yeshan chatvam bahumato bhutva yasyasi lagavam. Bhayat out of fear, Ranat on the battlefield, Uparatam siege, Mamsyante they will consider Tvam, you, Maharata, the great generals, Yesham for whom Cha also, Tvam, you, Bahumata in great estimation, Bhutva having been, Yasyasi you will go, Lagavam decreased in value. Translation. The great generals who have highly esteemed your name and fame will think that you have left the battlefield out of fear only, and thus they will consider you insignificant. Purport. Lord Krishna continued to give his verdict to Arjuna. Do not think that the great generals like Duryodhana, Karna and other contemporaries will think that you have left the battlefield out of compassion for your brothers and grandfather. They will think that you have left out of fear for your life, and thus their high estimation of your personality will go to hell. Text 36. Avachyavadam sabhun vadishyanti tavahita nindantastav samardhyam tato dukkatarum nukim. Avachya unkind, vada unfabricated words, cha also, bahun many, vadishyanti will say, tava your ahita enemies nindanta while vilifying, tava your samardhya ability, tata than that, dukkatara more painful, no. Of course, Kim, what is? Your enemies will describe you in many unkind words and scorn your ability. What could be more painful for you? Purport. Lord Krishna was astonished in the beginning of Arjuna's uncalled for plea for compassion, and he described his compassion as befitting the non-Aryans. Now in so many words he has proved his statements against Arjuna's so-called compassion.